If weight removal is hard for you, especially when it comes to layers, stick around. I'm going to show you some techniques that you can use right away. We're going to be using the Olivia PrecisionCut Shears. These are 6.5 inches long. You can see that there's a little groove right here for you to rest your fingers right into for comfort purposes. And it has an offset handle as well, so it keeps your hands right on top of itself, and that reduces carpal tunnel. What I like about the PrecisionCut Shears is exactly what they sound like. They help you with getting more of a precision cut, and they help with removing weight, point cutting, and getting that signature in the hair. So we're actually going to be doing this on dry hair, and you can see by our dolly here, we've got a little bit of weight that is happening through the center of the hair and even through these fringy bits that we cut previously. So this is the perfect example when you have a client that comes in and you want to go through and remove some weight, but you don't necessarily want to do a whole different shape. So I'm gonna actually take it through the very center of the head first, because that's where most of that weight is living. So we're gonna start out by taking a section about 2 inches wide on the sides of the head. So we're basically pulling it right where the parietal ridge is. And I'm gonna be connecting, if you pull this up, you can kind of see a disconnection between that fringy bit and this corner right here. So we're actually gonna go in and point cut the corner to soften it. And we're gonna do that all the way around the head. The reason why I don't want to go in with a blunt line is because a blunt line is going to show a blunt line, and then we're going to see another weight line. So by doing this, it almost kind of, in some ways, it's like an eraser. You're just taking it and you're softening it. So when you drop that down, you can kind of see that it helps to melt out some of that weight from the top into her perimeter below. So I'm going to do this all the way around the head. And when I get to the other side, I'm going to show you my next point of weight removal. Now, it's really important when you're doing this step that you make sure that you're pulling it right at its heaviest point. And the heaviest point where the weight lives is typically where the parietal ridge is. That's the roundest part of the head. So we want to pull that at a 90-degree angle. And that's where you're going to see where that weight lives. So we're just really wanting to erase this corner, but we don't want to take it out completely. So by going in with some deeper point cutting, we fragment it. You can still see where that old weight line lives, but it is a lot more minimized. Like, it kind of helps to filter that out. So you can see that the end result is a little more filtered out through the ends, and it's a little bit more fragmented. So it kind of helps with erasing that line, but it's not as if we're taking that hair out completely. This is my last section that I'm gonna bring up, and this might have a little less hair, but we're still gonna do the exact same steps. So now that I finished that step, I like to look through the cut really quickly and just see, is that ledge gone? Can I see it still, or is it pretty much erased? And it's almost completely erased, really. I see a slight ledge that's happening from that point into the length. And so this is one more step that you can do within your layering that still helps to minimize weight, but you're not necessarily changing the shape. All you're doing is getting rid of that heavy point. So now I'm gonna go through and over direct. I'm gonna bring all the hair straight up. And the more hair you wanna preserve, the more you're gonna change your fingers. So if you take your fingers where they're pointed in toward the head at a 45-degree angle, you're gonna be removing more weight from that perimeter. If you take your fingers at a 90-degree angle and you pull it straight up, all of that length is gonna fall out and you don't have very much length left. If you do it somewhere in the middle where you're still over-directing, because over-directing is still keeping the length, and you do it at a 90-degree angle, that's somewhere kind of between the middle. So if I were to connect those 2 points just through there with my PrecisionCut Shears, when I drop that down, it falls onto itself. So it just helps to soften the ends a little bit. And again, I don't really want to remove that perimeter. So if I put my hand underneath that perimeter, you can see where it's already getting fairly piecey looking. So this is the part where you can actually decide here and there. You don't have to do it throughout the entire cut. So the back portion of the hair is a lot heavier. So if I were to turn this, for example, you can see the difference between the front and the back. This is a lot heavier through here. This is light through here. So the exact example that I shared with you, I'm gonna do that exact same thing more behind the ear. So I'm gonna bring this straight up through here, pull it up to over direct, and my fingers are going to become slightly more at a 90-degree angle. I'm gonna connect those two pieces together, and I'm gonna continue on through the entire back area because that's where the weight is being seen the most. So I'm gonna pause here for a moment because I want you to actually see the difference between one side and the other. You can see here where this kind of curves in and it slowly melts into that shape. Here it wants to protrude out, it's heavier, it's thicker, it definitely looks like there's a lot more hair on this side. So what this does is it refines it and it kind of makes it bevel in slightly. But again, we're not stacking the layers up so much where you actually see the tiers of layers. It just helps to minimize that weight through there. And again, this is a really great trick when you don't want to use the texturizing shears. So I'm going to still pick up these sections exactly how I was before. I'm still over directing so I can preserve some of that length through there. And then I'm stopping right at that 90-degree angle and I'm just connecting that top layer into the length. Although it feels like such a little amount of hair, you're actually removing just enough where you can disguise that weight point. I'm gonna point out really quickly as well, when I'm pulling my section up, instead of keeping my fingers where they were, I'm correcting my fingers to go a little bit more 90-degree angle. If I kept my fingers where they were, you know I'm going to be removing more weight from the back side. And that is something that we can revisit once I'm done with this step, but I'd still wanna keep enough of that length through the bottom so it still does preserve some of that perimeter and it keeps it intact. Now that I'm getting to the other side of the haircut, I'm just evaluating, is there weight here that I can remove? And yes, it's still a bit heavy through here, so I will continue that through the side here. This is something also, again, like you want to really use your eyes and just go through the areas that look visually heavy to you. If they look visually heavy to you, then this is where you can customize that a little bit more. So there's one last thing I want to do through this back area because again, it's still fairly heavy. And that's exactly what I was talking about, where I'm over directing the hair, but I was still taking at that 90-degree angle. So rather than a 90-degree angle, I'm going to over direct that bottom portion. I'm gonna point my fingers more in toward the head at a 45-degree angle. That's gonna let me remove a little bit more length. So I'm gonna go through the exact same spot in the very back of the head, about 1 inch behind the ear. I'm gonna bring everything straight up, fingers pointed in toward the head. And this is where I'm changing my shape a little bit. That's the length that I just cut from the 90-degree angle. This is actually some of her length. So I'm gonna go through that portion and I'm gonna slowly show you as I drop this down, what happens is that we get a little bit more of a steep point from the shortest piece to the longest piece. I'm gonna do a couple more here so that we can once again do a back-to-back or a side-to-side from one side to the other. So you can see where that weight removal is actually showing up. Okay, once again, we're just gonna do a side-by-side comparison because I just did that 45-degree angle over directed with the PrecisionCut shears. This side here, you can see where there's a little less weight right in this portion through the bottom, whereas this side here, we still have a little bit to go. So this is exactly the example I was talking about. By just changing your angle and the direction that you're actually removing that weight, you're still going through the same motions, but now you're just going at a slight 45-degree angle, which actually goes a little bit more into that perimeter. So we're gonna go ahead and finish up exactly what we're doing, the 45-degree angle, over directing from the middle to about 1 inch behind the ear. I'm gonna stop there because that is where it starts to be a little less heavy or weighted. So we're gonna finish this up right through here, and then we're gonna do one more thing because the bang area we still have not addressed. Once again, I'm gonna leave a little bit of clearance from behind the ear, about 1 to 2 finger widths behind the ear, so about 1 inch. And then I'm gonna grab the remainder of that hair, pull it straight up, and there's really not much left to cut, just that little tiny portion through there. So as you can see by just doing this step, it actually just helps to minimize that weight and it collapses a little bit more. It enhances the shape, and in some ways it actually makes the length look longer because it's not so heavy on the bottom. So this is the perfect example of removing weight from existing length without cutting the length off or changing anything for your client. Because a lot of times our clients come in and they like the length or they don't mind the shape, but something feels a little off, and that's something that you can do to correct it. One last thing I want to show you before we're done, and I want to go through some of these fringy bits through here. You can kind of see that the fringy bits fall in a slight weight point, even though that they were cut fairly light. And this is a really great example when a client comes in and they like the length of it, but maybe it just doesn't feel like it's connecting into the rest of the length. So this is something where I'm going to do the exact same step that I showed you before with the weight removal from the bottom. I'm taking this entire section from where it lives, over directing it straight up in the air, and now I'm going to be connecting some of that length into the rest of the length. By me just taking this step and I drop that down, you can see here where that bang just melts into the rest of the cut, and you can't really tell where the bang starts and stops. So this is a perfect example when you want to actually grow those fringy bits out on a client, or they don't necessarily want to take those fringy bits shorter, then taking this step can really help you, and it's in one step. So again, we're going to take this side through here where you can kind of see that weight point. We're taking it about 2 inches deep into the hairline. We're going to over direct it straight up through here, and all we're doing is connecting some of those layered pieces into the very top portion of the hair. And then when I drop that down, it helps to melt into the rest of the cut. You can't tell exactly where those start and stop. Now, if your client actually loves having some of those fringy bits and wants to bring those together, this is where you can actually go after the very middle section. So I would draw this straight forward to the center of the face. I would go after just that little bit of triangle right where the comb wants to jump off the head. Take a little piece where the triangle is. And I'm first over directing it toward the face, right where the bridge of the nose is. So I'm gonna go through here. My fingers are pointed right toward the bridge of the nose. And the point cutting, I'm gonna do the point cutting again. I'm gonna go into the shortest point that I see here, and I'm gonna remove the center piece where it looks a little bit heavy. Now I'm gonna drop everything straight down on top of her face. So I'm gonna bring everything straight down here. And I'm gonna connect in where that lightest point is through here. I'm gonna go in at an angle of 45, and then I'll do the exact same thing on the other side at a 45-degree angle. Now when I draw everything straight back and I let it settle into itself, she's got lift, and it feels as though we went quite a bit shorter with her fringe, but really she's got these disconnected pieces that melt into the rest of what we just did here with that weight removal. The next time you want to do some weight removal, try these steps out. Definitely use the PrecisionCut Shears, which is going to help you with blending, notching, point cutting, and slide cutting. Thank you so much for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.